Welcome to the next installment of the Miami Group Sierra Club Virtual Backpack Series.
The last week or 2 weeks ago, rather, Brian covered some really important points about trip planning. And this week, we're going to pick up where he left off with Happy Trails Part 2, Trip Planning, Trail Routing, and Trail Specifics. Well, let's start off just by introducing your presenters to you. We're all experienced campers, hikers, and backpackers, and additionally, we're all instructors for the Miami Group Sierra Club Backpacking School. My name is Nancy Ball. I've been camping and hiking and backpacking for as long as I can remember, and I've been leading trips close to home and to different places around the world since 2005. And this past year, I launched my new business planning and leading adventure trips. My company name is Summit Trek and Travel. We also have with us Barry. Barry, if you'd introduce yourself.
Yep, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. And my name is Barry Randall, otherwise known as Aardvark. And I've been backpacking and doing all sorts of other outdoor activities for more years than I care to remember. Currently, I'm the outings chairperson for the Miami Group, which means we plan and lead a variety of outdoor activities, including backpacking trips for all different levels. So again, thanks for joining. Denise?
Are you there, Denise?
If you're talking, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I had myself on mute. Hi, I'm Denise Tingle, actually AKA Pippi Longstocking, my trail name because I usually wear braids when I'm backpacking. And I've been camping, hiking, backpacking for about 45 plus years. I am the hiking cheerleader for the Miami Group Sierra Club, along with an instructor for the backpacking school. In addition, I lead cycling rides and backpacking trips and hiking. My passion is backpacking, cycling, and I just love the outdoors. I would also like to introduce Brian Wolf, aka Iceman. He's the co-owner of the Road, Rivers, and Trails, and he wasn't able to join us tonight, so but he's also one of our presenters. Nancy?
Thank you, Denise. Okay, so since we began these webinars in May, we've covered a whole bunch of topics of everything ranging from tents and sleeping bags to stoves and water filters, and from navigation to knot tying. So if you've been following us by now, you're probably all geared up and ready to go. So what's next? What things do you need to be thinking about when you're planning your next or your first backpacking trip? We actually want to start off by hearing your thoughts about this. So I'm going to ask each of you to please type into the chat box one or more things that you think need to be considered in order to safely plan your next backpacking trip. I'm going to ask you to do that now, and we'll take a minute or two while you consider what some of those important things are that ought to be planned out ahead of time. You know, things like, you know, what sort of hair gel do you need if it's going to be really humid out, you know, stuff like that, or are there going to be any species of trees with USB ports where you can recharge your phone, and, you know, really important stuff like that. Have you synchronized your playlist with your fellow backpackers, or anything else that you think is important or that might be important to you? We're going to give you a few minutes. Not sure how many people we have on the call, but we would like to get some notes from everybody. Okay, I see we've got route, water, weather, campsite, temperatures and distance.
Yeah,
permit.
Some good, getting good input.
Yeah. Starting off on the right track for sure. We'll wait another little bit here, see if we have any more ideas to add to the list.
Please don't be shy in typing in your answers or whatever in the chat box.
Garbage. Oh.
Garbage.
Yeah. Actually, that is a good consideration.
Did you guys, while they're typing that in, did you guys see that article about Max Patch that was in Backpacker magazine? Oh, that was so sad.
It was awful.
Got trashed.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, it's good and bad. With the whole COVID thing, a lot more people have been getting out and doing things outdoors, which is wonderful, but it's really taking a toll on some of our natural places because not everyone has
Yeah.
First of all, not everyone is familiar with the leave no trace principles, and are just not accustomed to thinking about those kinds of things. And then you get the, vandalism variety type thing too, which is sad.
Yeah.
So.
And what I see is masks laying around everywhere in parking lots.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's
That's
bad. I see terrain and weather and distances have been added to the list. So this is a pretty good list. I think that most of the things on this list we will at least touch on today. I'm not sure, we actually aren't even going to touch on the garbage thing, Barb, so thank you for including that. There are some things that Brian took care of 2 weeks ago, so we will, there'll be a little bit of repetition of what we're doing today, but we're trying not to make it too redundant. So hold on to your hat and here we go. Okay, so first of all, you decide you want to go backpacking. You got a whole world out there of places that you could choose to go, and you need to figure out some way of narrowing down your choices. So some of the things that you'll want to think about up on the front end are listed on here. So time versus distance, whether you're traveling to, just a favorite local destination by car, or you're flying to California to hike in the Sierras, how far you have to go and how long it'll take you to get to your starting point is as much a factor in planning as the actual time and distance of the hike itself. We're going to talk more about all of these things as we go through the rest of this presentation. Your goals for the trip are obviously a factor. There, it mentions region and aesthetics here, but are you out to bag a bunch of peaks? Are you looking to log long miles? Or do you just want to get the feel of some dirt under your feet and stars above your sleeping bag for a couple of nights? Or you're targeting a certain scenic trail or some overlook or mountaintop that you've heard about and you've always wanted to see. And the next thing is who's going with you. Group size really matters. If you're going solo, you can hike your own hike, choosing your own speed and where to bunk down for the night. But if you're backpacking with a group, you have to consider the capacity of campsites for tents and also the impact on the environment when you're choosing your location. You've got to keep leave no trace principles in mind. So, and another factor if you're traveling with a group is that you have to plan to travel at the speed of the slowest hiker. There are, of course, some advantages to traveling with a group, like you can reduce your load by sharing tents or stoves or fuel and things like that. So traveling with a group has a lot of positives, but you do have to consider this as you're planning out your trip. Preparation time, and again, this can work in a couple of different ways. If you're getting ready to head out next week versus a trip 3 months from now, you've got more time to prepare, not only to get your gear ready, but to get yourself fit. I don't know about you, but when we just came back from a trip to up in the White Mountains, among other things, and I spent the 6 weeks before that trip just getting myself in better shape so that I'd be able to climb Mount Washington. I wouldn't have been able to do that if my trip notice was only a week out. So you got to think about whether you're in good enough shape to cover difficult terrain or significant elevation gain and things like that on the spur of the moment, or do you need some time to build yourself up? Base camping. Do you want to move your camp each night to progress to a series of campsites along the trail? Or do you want to just set up a base camp and day hike out from that point in different directions each day? And then things like the time of year and weather. So some trails might not be accessible or maybe closed because of snow or fire or storms, etc. So those are all some of the kinds of things that we needed to think about as we're planning for our next backpacking trip. Once you've decided where you're going to go, kind of narrowed your choices down, there's several ways to find routes that'll meet your goals and will be appropriate for your skill level. Right off the bat, Google. Oh my goodness, you can find almost anything on Google. Just type in your destination and all kinds of resources and details will pop up. Same is true with YouTube. A lot of people that hike will post pictures of trails or destinations, not pictures, videos of trails or different destinations that you might be considering, and that'll help you get a really good idea of what the terrain is actually like. Park websites. I never plan a trip without checking the park website if they have one, and most parks do. They give you all kinds of detail like trail information and trail conditions and fees and animal protocols, et cetera, et cetera. They'll even tell you what hotels are nearby in case you need a place to stay when you first get there before you start your hike. And rangers, that's another resource that I always tap into. Very good to talk to them because they know the areas well and can give you like up-to-date real-time information about trail conditions and what water sources are like and that sort of thing. So we didn't want that to pop up there. Your local outfitters, places like Roads, Rivers, and Trails are a great source of information as well. They have a lot of knowledge, they have books and maps, and you're going to find that, you know, in most cases, someone on their staff has taken the trip that you're planning already and can tell you firsthand what it was like. So word of mouth is another great source of information. Just hiking with other people, you're going to hear about places that they've gone and really enjoyed, and maybe places you've never even thought of. I can tell you for myself that two places, Savage Gulf and Fiery Gizzard, are two places that I really enjoy going to, that I first went to with some of the other people on this call, excuse me, because we heard about them from another backpacker and because the names were just too cool to like not go check it out. So I want to show you an example of a trail guide. I think all of the national parks that have backcountry camping have something like this. This particular one is from Grand Teton, and I know the print is too small for you to be able to read it well on your screen, and it's one of the attachments included that you can download after the presentation, so you have it for reference. Excuse me, but it includes a trail map and general information on just about everything you need to know for your pre-planning at least. So it talks about group sizes, fees and permits. It talks about what the weather is like for each month of the year, tips on backcountry safety, leave no trace, animal protocols, trail mileage, and a whole lot of other stuff too. It still does not replace that last minute call to the ranger's office though for an up-to-date report on water and trail conditions and any alerts that might be in effect. So let's talk about some of those trail specific things that you need to know about. One of the first ones is water. Is it reliable? Is it, are there any recent reports telling you whether it's reliable or not, and what kind of treatment is necessary? For instance, is it really silty? So you might have to pre-treat before you actually run it through your Sawyer filter. Bringing along a filter or a purifier is essential, but they're useless if you don't know where your water is coming from. So are there reliable streams? Is there going to be a lake that you can count on for refilling your water? Or will you have to take a detour in order to reach your water source, which means adding time to your day? If you plan to get water from snowfields for winter camping, you got to factor in enough fuel to melt the snow. And like I was saying, if the water is going to be silty, you might have to bring a certain kind of filter, or you might have to bring something to pre-filter it. It's also really highly recommended that you bring more than one water treatment source, because if it fails, you could really be in trouble. It's one area where redundancy is good in backpacking. A second trail-specific item that you need to know about is any animal activity. So that might include bear alerts or just food storage protocols in general. You need to check with the rangers or one of the other resources we mentioned on the previous slides to find out what the protocol is for storing food, because different parks have different requirements. Some will mandate that you have to use a bear canister. Some bear-proof bags are okay. And in some cases, they have actually steel bear boxes on the trail for you to store your food in the camping areas. And keep in mind that although bears might be the first thing on your mind and sound pretty scary, the animals that are most likely to give you trouble are the little creatures like squirrels and chipmunks and mice. But the key here is to remember the leave no trace principles, and that is respect wildlife. And part of that is not doing anything that will change their behavior, like letting them get to your food. Moving right along. Oops. Now we're moving right along. Some additional trail specifics. So again, use all your resources to check on trail conditions as you're planning your trip, and right up to the day before you leave, because things can change due to fire or rock slides or trees being blown down. And you just need to, you're gonna be better prepared if you know ahead of time. You also want to have an idea of how much hiker traffic there is, especially if the trail doesn't limit the number of hikers on the trail at one time. And be aware that some trails are multi-use, meaning that you might be sharing the trail with horses or mules or sometimes mountain bikers or ATVs. Terrain can and will affect both your distance and your time. If it's steep and rocky, like the picture that you see here of that's the Hermit Trail in the Grand Canyon, you're not going to be hiking 2 miles an hour if it's a surface that looks like that, and it's going to affect how far you can get in each day. So these are all conditions that need to be factored in when you're planning your trip. Okay, we're going to change gears a little bit here and talk about campfires. We're going to start off with a poll. So Denise, if you would launch the first poll, the one on campfires. So these are all, you can mark multiple answers, and what we want you to do is mark which ones are true. So these are all statements that are either true or false. I'm going to let you kind of read through it yourself and let you decide which of these you think are true. Again, check all that are true, and then we'll talk about the answers a little bit. I always feel like we should have Jeopardy music playing, like when we're doing these polls. We should try to do that, actually. Figure out some way. I bet Barry can figure that out. He's our
we could certainly try. I'm sure we have the technology.
Well, you're our most savvy tech guy on these webinars, so
that's a sad commentary.
One thing I just wanted to remember, or just to remind everyone, is also when you store your food, you store it 200 feet from your tent, trail, or water source. So just be sure that you do that. It's a real important thing to do.
Absolutely. Good reminder. Looks like we have 66% of the participants have weighed in. Oh, we're almost there. Okay. Give you 10 more seconds, and then we'll close out the poll. Remember your answers. Denise, if you want to go ahead and close it out and share the results, that would be awesome. Very good. Okay, so take a look and remember your answers. We're going to kind of go through this, and you can get judged for yourself how well you did. I'm saying, just looking at your answers, y'all did pretty well. Y'all did pretty well. There might be a couple of pieces of information we've got to share with you that might be new for you. I'm going to go ahead and close out the result. There we go. So let's just talk through this. So number one, the way to get rid of your trash is to burn it. It's actually never a good idea to burn any trash because, first of all, it doesn't burn completely, so there will always be remnants of whatever you burned left behind. That means that if there's any food bits in there, it's going to leave a scent that attracts curious food-seeking animals. And then those animals are likely to return repeatedly to that same site and become habituated to the site and to the people around there, which is not good. Not good for the people, not good for the animal. And keep in mind, again, it's not just bears, it's the squirrels and the rodents that are a bigger danger actually than the bears, because they get into food supplies and nest in the shelters and spread disease. And also, burning trash releases toxins into the air. So not even paper should be burned in your campfire, especially not if it has any printing on it. So by the way, that means that you should use something other than a piece of scrap paper or cardboard to start your fire. So think about that one. Number two, collect only down dead wood for your campfire. Yes, that's true. Cutting down dead trees disturbs the natural habitat, and actually in most places it's even forbidden. Number three, it's okay to move a fire ring if you need to or build a new one. No, not really. If there's an existing fire ring, you should use it. If there is no fire ring and you need or want to fire, and it's permitted in the area, you build your own fire ring. And you know, there's certain specific ways of doing that to be safe. We're not going to go into that now, but if anybody wants information on how to build a fire ring in areas where you do build your own, just let us know and we'll help you with that. Number four, build your fire as big as you need to stay warm. You know, actually it's a better idea all the way around, just to keep your campfire small. Build it big enough just to serve its purpose, which maybe is to provide, you know, some atmosphere. Maybe it's to keep your feet warm, but if you're cold, building a big fire really isn't the most effective way of getting yourself warm anyway. It's better to add some additional layers of clothing, and it's better for the environment to have a smaller fire. Number five, yes, cooking over a stove does have less impact on the environment and is far more reliable than a campfire, so it's a better choice all around. And number six, yes, again, your fire should be out cold before you leave your campsite. Smoldering embers can easily be fanned to a flame with a little wind, which then starts a fire that's looking for fuel to burn. And all you have to do is think about what's going on in California right now to be, you know, appropriately concerned about doing that. When you go to bed at night, make sure your fire is either out, or if the conditions are okay, meaning that it's not dry and not windy, it's tamped down for the night so that there's nothing that's going to blow around and accidentally get something else started. Number 7, it is always a good idea to build a campfire. Not really. I love having a campfire. I love the cozy warmth of the fire. I love the feeling of camaraderie and the atmosphere it creates, but it does have an impact on the environment, and it seldom is really a necessity. Sometimes it's just not a good idea. If the conditions are dry or the wind is up, having a campfire can be risky. It's a fact that nearly 85% of all wildfires are started by people. And additionally, fires are restricted or prohibited in some parks, so make sure that you check your local regulations. And I have a reminder, this is from Denise, always keep in mind that the leave no trace principle, number 5 rather, is to minimize campfire impacts. So things like using existing fire rings, burning your fire small, and burning everything to all ash and soaking it well with water and making sure it's out are all part of that leave no trace principle. Okay, more trail specifics. So your point of getting out there may be specifically to see some really great spots, but even if that's secondary, maybe your real goal is to hike some long miles, talk to the rangers or local people anyway about what their favorite spots are. Sometimes there's some real treasures out there that you can discover with a little bit of assistance from somebody who knows the area. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about this idea of staying found. Now, we did a map and compass navigation course, actually 2 of them, last month, I guess it was. So this isn't about that. This is more about, you know, if something does happen, how you can, your planning ahead of time can help minimize the odds of something happen, and also how you can make sure other people are informed so that they can find you if you need help. So why do people get lost or need to be rescued when they take a hike or journey into the backcountry? So one of the chief reasons is a lack of preparation and planning. And one way to prepare yourself is to write up a trip plan that'll help you assess all the different route options and determine if you need to bring, you know, any sort of extra gear or food or water on the trip. And a trip plan helps ensure that the route you want to go, that you're thinking of going on, is going to be a good match for the time that you have available and the people that you're planning to go with. And it is an excellent idea. It's a very good practice to be in always, to leave a copy of your trip plan with a trusted friend or relative, so that should something go wrong and you don't show up back home when you're supposed to, they know where you went. And as long as you followed your plan, any search and rescue team that goes out looking for you will at least have some idea of the places to start looking. Again, this is the print's too small for you to see it very clearly on here, but it'll be in on the webpage that we're going to give you a link to, a copy of a trip plan that talks through step by step some of the things that you need to consider on the front end, and then also gives you a place where you can plan out on each day the route you plan to take, how many miles you're covering, things like elevation changes, and where you're going to get water. You'll be able to access that after the presentation is over. And with that, I'm ready to turn things over to Denise.
Thank you, Nancy.
Welcome.
We're going to go ahead and get started with getting to the trailhead. Where do you park your car? It is important in your planning what to do with your car while you're hiking. Keep in mind, not all trailheads have parking or enough parking, so you might need to look elsewhere in the area. In that case, you might need permission or permit or documentation. Example, I recall 2 incidents you need a permission slip. So you're at Big South Fork and we parked our car at Allen Ford, and to reserve a spot there, we also needed to print a permission slip to put in the car window with the start date and the return date. This form was downloaded from the website. The other was when we were doing a rails to trail bike trip 2 years ago, and the closest safe place to park one of our cars was at a land management headquarters. We called and they said yes, but needed to know the length of time, car, make, and model, and when we would return. So one thing to note, if you're permitted to park your car at a trailhead and there is a gate, do not block the gate, or you will be ticketed. I know someone that happened to. Also keep in mind, when you're parking somewhere illegal, that you might get towed. Also, would you need a shuttle? Shuttles cut down a lot of time off your trip and really aren't that expensive when you consider your time spending staging cars. A good resource is called the visitor centers or even the local chamber of commerce of nearby towns or cities. Cost often can be per person or per group. So like a group of 4, say, with an added cost for additional person. Once you get used to using a shuttle, you're glad you did. Another factor to ask, will your car be safe to park where you're going to leave it? The local police or rangers will know this. And we never used to use shuttles, a couple of my friends, and it is a lifesaver. The next is mapping out the hike and know the location of these things. So know your water sources. And just because it shows one doesn't always mean it's flowing. So example, a spring, depending on the season. Typical, it might be running, but say it happens to be a really hot spring. Well, good chance there's no water at that seasonal spring. So you need to plan ahead in that case and carry enough water until you know for sure there is a reliable source. You will need to know how far off the trail you need to go to get water also. So reliability. Do you need to treat it? What type of water source? Seasonal spring, like I mentioned. Also, is the water source marked? If not, where on the trail is it? Sometimes it's necessary to stay at a dry camp, which means there's no water source for that campsite. Therefore, you will need to bring enough water to get to the next reliable water source. So talk to rangers, land managers, or get current trail reports for up-to-date water reports. And are there shelters? And if so, how many does it sleep? Campsites. Are there designated sites, such as with a permit or on the trail? What amenities does a campsite have, such as a privy, water source, or even a bear hang or locker? Is there dispersed camping, meaning you can camp anywhere? And are there restricted areas that you cannot camp, such as forest restorations, too close to private land? And how far is the water source from where you are camping? And another good one is if you're hiking, like I was last year in the Smokies, or near the Smokies, it was really, really dry. And as people were, we were going north, and as they were coming south, we asked them, hey, we know there's a water source at this specific place. And, do you know if it's still flowing? And sure enough, it wasn't, because it had ended up being so dry. So sometimes just the people on the trail you can ask, because, say they were just there. Another thing is keep your bearings. It is easy to lose your bearing because you're talking while hiking, or you're always looking down on the trail. So get in the habit of looking for the trailblazers or other trail identification often and checking where you are on the map. Like I said, it is easier to get distracted, and the next thing you know, you missed the turnoff that wasn't marked, or you can't find a blaze anymore. If you think you might have gotten off the trail, stop. Stay calm and review your map or your GPS. Satellite phone that you downloaded your maps to find where you are. I was backpacking with friends, and another friend and I decided to head back to the car the next morning because it was getting colder and snowing harder. And we were on the AT near Match Pack. And so we started back down, and while the snow was blowing and sticking to the tree, we didn't see the blaze because it was white and the snow was sticking to the tree there. And so sure enough, the snow had covered the white blaze. Well, about 5 minutes, we realized that, and we got out our map, and we were just slightly off and saw the white blaze in the far distance. Again, know where you are. Sorry, my paper is sticking. Other types of trail markers. These are just different trail markings that you will encounter. Keep in mind that U.S. Forest Service trails very seldom have trail markings, or if they do, they are scarce, faded, or sometimes the trail posts are so old you can't read them anymore. Also keep in mind that sometimes you will have more than one trail marking on a tree, like the one above. The turtle represents the Chautauqua Trace Trail, and the diamond the local trail. At times they share the same trail for a distance. Always reference the trail on your map. And again, it's really a good idea just to stop and check your map every once in a while, just to be sure you're still on the same trail. Like Nancy had said too, let others know your plans. Always leave your itinerary with someone at home. If you're driving, it is important to also give them your license number of your car, make, and model, not to mention the spare key. So you should always carry a spare key with you and let the group know where your key is in your pack if they would need it. where you're going and when you plan to get off the trail and be home. Some trailheads require you to sign in and out. This is for your safety and is monitored often. If you don't return, they know to send a search party. You will need to carry emergency numbers with you, including the nearest ranger office. Also, it is a good idea to have the shuttle number if you aren't going to get off the trail in time. It is also very important that others you are traveling with have exchanged emergency numbers and know where they are if you need to locate them. Also, keep in mind, is there cell service? If not, is your means for communication, if needed, what are you going to use? Do you have a spot, a satellite you reach device? Now, hiker courtesy. Remember in your trip planning, if you're with a group, you will be hiking the pace of the slowest hiker and keep track of each other. And if you don't hike the same pace, agree where to meet and wait. This could be a water source, an agreed bunch spot, etc. We think it is best not to hike more than, say, 10, 15 minutes ahead, as you don't want to be so far ahead that if someone gets hurt, you might not be able to leave that person, or even they might need your help. Or maybe the person unexpectedly got off the trail. And never let someone hike alone. You should always have a leader in the seat. And also remember, it's a good idea to keep a whistle with you so that if someone is ahead of you hiking, they can really hear that whistle. Okay. Questions. So we can pause here to hear and address any questions that you have in the chat box.
So nothing in the chat so far, Denise.
Okay. Well, we can, if you want to think about some questions, you could go ahead and type them and we can just move on and answer them in the, at the end.
Okay.
Nancy?
We are actually, hang on a second here. We're pretty much finished with the topic now. So we've got another quick poll for you. We hope that you got some new ideas from this, that this was helpful, but it will help us if you let us know how many new ideas you got so we can figure out if we're giving information out that's helpful or not. So while you're completing this last poll, I'm going to mention again that in a few minutes, I'm going to post a PDF copy of this presentation on the Sierra Club website. Actually, I'm going to put a link that'll take you to a page that has the PDF and also has the Grand Teton Trail Guide and the trip planning form for your use if you'd like to download those. You'll also be able to access the schedule of future webinars, which right now I think we have one that's posted. There's a couple more coming up behind it. The next one is in 2 weeks. And Barry, remind me the topic of the next one. Are you there,
So
Barry?
the next in 2 weeks will be lightweight, not quite ultralight, but lightweight backpacking. And then 2 weeks after that, I think we're talking dehydrating food, backpacking food.
I think that sounds right. Thank you. I was having a little brain blank there, but that sounds right. But you'll be able to access those, the page that has the links to sign up for those. And if you need to sign off at this point, we understand that, although we actually did really well on time today. We're not anywhere close to going over, which is not always the case. But we're going to have live Q&A in just a few minutes if you want to stick around for that. We'd love to hear what kind of additional questions you have. You can continue to use the chat box. And in fact, if you have ideas or requests of topics that you'd like to hear about in the future, we'd love for you to put that in the chat box for our planning purposes. Just so you can think ahead, we're gonna continue these webinars through November, and then we'll be taking a break for the holidays in December. And we'll be coming back in January and February with some new topics. And then at some point, I'm thinking it'll probably be early in the spring. We'll probably start this cycle over again so that people who were not able to attend the early sessions will have it. We've got new beginners coming on. Let's see, what else do we want to tell you about? I can advance the screen. So yeah, if you love the outdoors as much as we do, we would invite you to join us. Exploring, enjoying, and protecting the planet is what we're all about, and there's some easy ways to do that. One is just become a Sierra Club member. One, if you like the work that you see being done and would like to support it financially, you can make a donation. Another is to join our meetup, which once we're having in-person outings again, that's where you will find any trips that we have planned. Also another place where you can find the webinars that we have planned. And additionally, you can become a volunteer, and there are links for all of those you'll see on the screen here, and they'll also be on the PDF copy that you'll be able to download afterwards. And then lastly, if you are already an experienced outdoors person with skills to share, we would love to have you join us on the outings committee. So we're looking for outing leaders who have a passion for sharing their experience with other people. And right now we're doing it, again, virtually through the webinar series, but someday we will be back on the trails and waterways and bicycle trails again. And we have a lot of fun doing that. And we'd ask you, if you're like-minded, please consider joining us. And then lastly, this presentation has been brought to you by Roads, Rivers, and Trails, our local independently owned outdoor outfitter in Milford, Ohio, by Miami Group Sierra Club, which is a part of the country's largest grassroots environmental movement, and by Summit Truck and Travel, your connection to adventure travel. So we're just about ready to start our live Q&A. If you have to log off, it's been great to be here with you, and we look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I hope I can do that so that we can all see each other. Yay, I can see your faces now. And I'm also going to change this, the settings, hopefully, that you, okay, oh, it's already there. Somebody already did it. You can now unmute yourselves. So if you have questions you'd like to ask at this point, you can use the chat box.
We did get one question in the chat box. The question was, what's a source for good recipes for backpacking? And I threw out a couple of my favorites. Backpacker Magazine, their website actually has a lot of very good recipes, basically from their magazine over the years. And then if you do dehydrate your own food or putting together more of a homemade meal, there's a guy calls himself Backpacking Chef Glenn, and his website has some great recipes. So those are two ideas I had. I don't know, Nancy or Denise, other sources for recipes?
Oh, I think I learned just from backpacking with friends and people that bring their own meals, and they look interesting. Like our friend Neil, he always has some interesting meals, or Jay.
Yep.
So yeah, I think even just asking the people that you backpack with is a good resource.
Yep.
So
A
interesting.
lot of times they let you try it too.
Yeah, it's nice when they bring extra.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of my stuff has come from trial and error and from copying what other people have done. But interestingly, I just today ran across a Facebook page, actually two of them, are not pages, but Facebook groups that are all about backpacking food. So one of them is specifically for people who are doing their own dehydrating, and another was for just more generically what kind of things. But they are backpacking groups that talk about food on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, try looking for that. They just popped up today. Also, I did just post the link to the page that has the PDF and the trail guide and the trip plan form on it for anybody who wants to download that. It's there now. Let's see. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, I didn't see any more.
Okay. I see Kevin Ernst on there. Hi, Kevin. It's been a while.
I think he left.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Okay. Well, I guess if we have no questions, are we ready to wrap up, Denise?
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And we hope to see you on future webinars that we do. And I see there are some familiar faces and new faces. So welcome. Again, thank you everyone.
All
and
right.